Hey guys, it's Jim here, and today we're going to be checking out the Supro Amulet 1x12 combo amplifier. This is also available in a 1x10 version, but I went with the 1x12 because over the last few months, I've had a lot of people requesting me to review this specific version of it because it checks a lot of the boxes that myself and a lot of you guys like in amplifiers. It's got built-in analog spring reverb, real tank, it's got tremolo, and it's got an attenuator. You can switch from 15 to 5 to 1 watts. And I think it's important on this amp to point out because in theory here, if you put it down to the 1 watt setting and you crank it, you can get those awesome breakup tones without really bothering too many people as much as if it was on the full 15 watt setting. So we're going to be checking this out, going over how this thing was built, if I've had any problems with it so far, and yeah, a few other little tidbits and nuggets of information that I feel are extremely important that rarely get brought up in these sorts of reviews. This video is not sponsored, but I did get this amplifier from Sweetwater, and if you like this or anything else you want to help out the channel, you can click on one of the affiliate links in the description. It does help me out a lot, and I do appreciate every single one of you guys that continue to do that. So, for the demo today, we're miking this thing straight up with an SM57. We're going to get some bassline tones using single coils, and then a little bit with humbuckers, and then we'll do some deeper testing afterwards. Now we're going to test the attenuation on this amplifier. As you can see, there's no microphone in front of it. We're going to be doing it based on room volume or perceived room volume via the room mic or the camera audio, whatever one is going to provide me a more accurate sort of representation of what you could expect here. So right now, we have it on 15 watts. We have no effects on whatsoever. No, not the band, just no actual effects, no reverb or trim. And we're going to crank it. Back up to 15. I want to start off with the positives here. This amp looks killer. All the modern Supro amps, the design team, they knock it out of the park in that aspect. Does that really matter? Not necessarily, not really, but I think it is something that is pretty cool and unique to Supro. Second thing is, this is a very light amplifier. If you wanted to take this thing gigging and you felt like you could rely on this, you're not going to be putting a lot of strain on your body to do so. It's significantly lighter than my Dr. ZZ Plus, which is also a 1x12 combo. I like that this comes with the greenback speaker in it. That's a nice touch on it. But one of my favorite sounds from the amplifier, and the thing that really had me interested to begin with, is when you max out the volume and then you put on some reverb and a little bit, just a little bit, of the tremolo dialed in. It's like magic. It's like this awesome vintage sound, and I'm big into surf music. I'm big into indie music, so for me, not having to use a single pedal to get all those great tones, that's a big plus in my book. This amplifier has enough clean headroom that if you wanted to use humbuckers with it and jam with the drummer, you wouldn't have any problems. And you could probably get away with most gigs with it. And if it wasn't quite enough, you could always mic the thing up and send it to the front of the house that way, which is what's going to happen 9 times out of 10 unless you're playing just a setup open mic or a small little house party. I think that the amp sounds really decent clean. I don't think it's outstanding clean, but it's definitely serviceable. One thing I did notice though, the reverb, it's kind of weird sounding depending on the application. I mentioned I really liked it when the gain was really being pushed and the tubes were really driven, but during clean circumstances, when I kind of start to wind it up a little bit, it seems like it goes from barely noticeable to very noticeable, and then there's almost like a drone that's happening. And I actually think, based on experiences I've had with other amplifiers, I know exactly why that is, and you'll be able to see on the back of the amplifier it's because of the location of the spring reverb tank. I've also experienced power sags several different times using this amplifier, including when I was filming the segment with the 77 Albatross, the humbucker guitar. Basically what happens is I'm playing the amp, everything's working as intended, and all of a sudden the volume just goes down, 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 down like an accordion. And then it springs back up, and then intermittently it just kind of does the same thing to lesser kind of varying degrees of levels. And it's not reliable in that sense either, but in fairness, that just might be a bad 6L6 power tube. If you're familiar with tube amplifiers, you would know it is absolutely normal and part of the design for these things to get a little bit hot. But this specific amp, after about an hour's worth of use, it felt like it was scorching, and I noticed this on several different days of playing it. I also think it's worth noting that the amp doesn't always sound exactly the same every day I play it, and it doesn't matter that I'm using the same exact guitar. I made sure to be using the same exact guitar when I was seeing if there was consistency in the sound or not, and I'm not sure what's causing that, but I can say this about the heat. Some people have found this issue so, potentially problematic, and obviously you don't want to overheat any of the components inside of a valve amplifier. That leads to problems or things breaking. Some people have actually routed out the chassis to be able to put in a vent, while a lot of other people are installing little third-party electrical fans at the bottom of the chassis to try and cool things down. These are not good signs in my opinion. I also noticed that in general, this is a pretty noisy amplifier, even on the clean settings when using humbuckers. And no, it has nothing to do with my power here. I'm using a Furman power conditioner, and I even tried a Morley hum debugger on top of that, and it didn't really make a difference. So that says to me, all my other amps don't have this problem. There is something with this amp that is specifically causing it, and that screams grounding problem. When I was looking up issues with the excess heat, I found a video by somebody called Psionic Audio. Mr. Lyle had taken apart a few of these, and I was interested in seeing what he had to say. He had a video where for $1 you could upgrade this amplifier and it would be well worth it. I'm going to leave a link to his video up here because I don't really feel like using his content that he made in his video on my video, but I feel like it is worth the watch, and he goes a little bit more into depth, and obviously he's a 30-year vet of working on amplifiers, and he knows when problems are going to arise, and he knows when corners are cut that shouldn't be pretty much straight away. The problem with this amp is the grounding issue has to do with one tiny part that wouldn't even cost them $1. And it's something that you would find whenever you're switching out a potentiometer on a guitar that it comes with, because again, you want to be able to have the connection as tight as possible on that. Why wouldn't you want it on your tube amp? It's a threaded washer that goes in between the actual connection of the chassis onto the jack that you would tighten via socket wrench on the top of it. That's unacceptable. This is a $1,300 amplifier, and you can't reliably tighten it without adding in one of those washers so that the ground is going to stay consistent. You can tighten it to your heart's content without one, but it's only going to keep spinning, and then eventually the cables are going to get tied. You don't want to do that. So if you do have one of these amplifiers, or you're looking at getting one of these amplifiers, unfortunately, some extra assembly will be required if you want to make sure you have a reliable ground connection. Another thing that really bothers me about this and all the Supros that I looked at that are currently in production, outside of the high-end Delegate series that are made in the USA, these are all made in China, but you'd never know by looking on Supro's website or on the amplifier itself from the back panel. It doesn't say anything, so maybe that's purposely done for one reason or another, and perhaps it's not meant to be a secret, because obviously if you look around online, you'll be able to find that information from third-party sources, but it kind of just doesn't sit with me well that they don't just say it. Be proud of it. There's lots of great Chinese brands that say made in China on them. Why not put it on this one? And that brings me back to another Chinese amplifier that I demoed, I think a year ago at this point. It was the Harley Benton / Monoprice 5-watt amp, and that thing cost at the time I think $200 to $300, and the build quality was extremely similar to this one. How do I know that? I was able to once again look and verify via one of Lyle's videos the guts of this amp and some of the things that just kind of make you shake your head, because they're all little things that if they just didn't cheap out on them, you would have a much more reliable amplifier in the long run. Using higher quality tube sockets would be another thing worth upgrading on this amplifier, as it would extend the life a little bit. And also using an actual Switchcraft jack, not a generic that looks like a Switchcraft jack. None of this stuff is going to break the bank. And again, thinking about the price of this amplifier, these are things that I would hope would have been done right and designed right at the beginning when this thing was first pitched out to be mass produced over in China. Last but not least here, I just want to leave you with this peace of mind. I don't set out to make negative reviews. I really don't. I wish that every piece of gear that I got, I could sit behind and say, you know what? I can, with good faith, recommend something to somebody. And in the case of this amplifier, I don't think I can, unless you buy one new and you go in knowing some of these potential problems and you're capable of doing some of this work or potentially upgrading the amp on your own. If you're just somebody who's looking for one amp, and this is going to be your only amplifier, you don't want it to go down, you can't afford repairs, you just don't want to have to afford repairs or potentially shipping the thing off to have it under warranty work, this might not be something that I would recommend unless you buy it from a place like Sweetwater if you're cool with the downtime. But once the warranty goes, you might find yourself spending more money than the amplifier is worth repairing it than it would be to just buy another. And that's a problem. Because to me, the one thing that really sucks about this is somebody made this argument on one of Lyle's videos, so I want to point this out too. If all these parts are so cheap, why is this such a deal breaker for people? Why don't they just replace the parts? Well, if it was that simple, yeah, that'd be a really good viable solution. But you have to think of the amp technician and how much the labor costs. Every time you wanted to do it, you have to pull the board, do all the work, reassemble the board, and then you test it. What if something else was a problem? There was some other issue. Pull the board, redo it. The fact that you have to do it every single time, the bill is just going to keep going up and up and up. And at that point, again, you could be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars repairing something that from the factory, if they had just invested a little bit more into the quality of the components, wouldn't need to be upgraded to begin with. And then if you did have problems, it would just be routine stuff that does happen with these sorts of amplifiers. Yeah, that's it for today. You've had some Supro amps. If you have one from either this generation where Bond Audio is the current owners or one of the other ones perhaps from the previous ownership, let me know what your experiences are down below. I wanted to love this amplifier, and as a matter of fact, I do love the way it looks and I love the sound that it makes, but for $1,300, knowing what I know now and doing a little bit more research, and I don't think it's something that I'm going to be keeping. So it is what it is. If you found this helpful, useful, and or entertaining, let me know in the comments section below. I assume that I'm going to get roasted by certain people in the comments, but this is just, it is what it is, guys. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take it easy, everybody. And to Supro, if you do end up watching this, I encourage you, upgrade these few things during the production process. You have a lot of happy campers later on down the road. Take it easy, everybody.